Out of control taxation, super high land acquisition costs, super high labor costs. When you're building apartments, yeah, those are fairly important. So what happens when that gets out of control? Well, one of the biggest developers of apartments in the United States pulling out of California. Yeah, let's get into it. Here we go. We talk a lot about insurance companies pulling out of California, all kinds of businesses closing down. But one of the most things that California is famous for is it's first-time home buyers, very difficult to get into housing. So there's all this pressure on apartment complexes. And now your supply of apartment homes is going to shrink even further because you've only got a few big builders out there. And when one pulls out, it tends to restrict the supply even further. Housing is just going to get more expensive in California. Major housing developers announced it will no longer pursue new projects in California. Atlanta-based Wood Partners, one of the country's largest real estate developers, did not provide a reason for its withdrawal, but said it would complete projects already underway in the state. Let's skip over to a tweet by a John Otter. Wood Partners is one of California's and the country's largest institutional large project apartment developers. The senior guys are friends of mine. This is what the guy putting up this tweet said. Today, they closed all of their California operations. The entire California staff has been let go. Everybody. They and their partners have concluded it no longer makes sense to try and do apartment development in California. Even when things hopefully recover, Wood Partners no longer is willing to do projects in California. They're right. The entire state of California, with 40 million people, will produce less rental housing than Dallas-Fort Worth, with 8 million people in 2024. 40 million and a massive housing shortage versus 8 million and plentiful housing, cheap, affordable housing. This is solely because of the financial burdens imposed on apartment development in California that simply don't exist in Dallas-Fort Worth and other places. And I've talked many times about how Texas and Florida have that blow and go mentality, which is good when you're trying to keep housing affordable. It means that you're willing to cut up land, make that land acquisition and development process simplified. And that is so true in Texas. When you go into a residential community in Texas, a lot of them are built on these concentric circles. As they build, they go further out from the downtown core. And they've got these circles of development, suburban circles. And when you get into an outer circle where there's development going on, man, they go, because you got flat land that doesn't have, all of this crazy, well, you got a spotted owl up in that tree. It doesn't have the wetlands. It doesn't have, steep slope. It doesn't have, butting up to mountains, butting up to Puget Sound, in my example. It's just flat land that you can cut and go. And builders, they can build en masse. California, not so much. Not so much. So, however dismal apartment Twitter thinks things are in California, those of us in the trenches know the reality is far, far worse. Apartment production in California in the coming years is going to be terrible, and the worsening supply-demand imbalance is going to make apartment housing much more expensive. So apartment housing being on the front end of, it's on the low end, it's on that entry rung of housing, right? All right, can't afford to buy a house. I'm going to go rent an apartment. All right. And so now that you've got a shrinkage of that supply, you're going to have more demand because you just flat don't have the housing that you need. And we've had a housing crisis throughout the United States for years and years and years. After the Great Recession, a lot of developers never recovered, just haven't had the numbers put up especially in an area like California. And like we said, 40 million people will produce less rental housing than DFW, with 8 million people in 2024. So much of that has to do with ability to build. How quick can you get it up? How quick can you get it done? That's an incentive for apartment builders to just get in there and go. If they can make money, consistently, time and time and time again, and keep doing that, then that's a go. If they can't, and in California, they're saying, yep, nope, we're out. We're done. We're toast. See ya. Bye-bye. We're going to go to areas where that development is so much easier, or easier relative to California. And I keep talking with folks that are builders or contractors in San Francisco, and they tell me that getting anything done in San Francisco, because of the overregulation, because of the fee structure, it's just not feasible. If you can get something done, you've got a market for it, obviously, because there's such an undersupply. But, getting there is just a horrifically difficult task. Whereas in Texas and in Florida and many other states, typically Republican states, you don't find this very, this crazy overregulation with all kinds of rules. And, you got to be 18 feet, 10 ways from Sunday from that green belt. Just all this nuttiness. And literally, I remember the song, Wipe My You-Know-What with the Spotted Owl. Do you remember that? Yeah, that was a good song back in the day. That's because we had some spotted owls here in the Pacific Northwest. Yeah, we can't cut down trees and build homes because, I got a spotted owl. I'm not for making species extinct, but you've also got to have some kind of balance in between building and land and all of that. And in California and in Washington and in Oregon, you're stuck in between the water and the mountains. So that further constricts the supply of land that is available for development. You throw a whole bunch of restrictions on top of that, and that's where you end up with California housing crisis as cities declared worst for first-time homebuyers. The list of first-time homebuying cities that are just terrible is pretty long. Let me see if I can find it here. San Francisco, Oakland, Los Angeles, Glendale, Costa Mesa, Santa Barbara, Anchorage, Alaska is in there. And the 10th worst for home buyers was New York. But California consistently was in that top 20 with just a whole bunch of cities, because you've got leadership that says, developers are bad, builders are bad. We're going to punish them for being bad people. All right, your development fee is going to be this. Oh, you got to have a fee for this. Oh, yeah, you got to have a permit for this. Things that you don't have in other states. They've kept the process simple because they understand business. Whereas the big blue states, big blue cities, big blue mayors, they could give a crap less, and they just keep constricting that supply. And here is the end result. Yeah, business. We're probably, shut her down. Closed, right? Texas-based rental housing economist Jay Parsons, who commented on Wood Partners' withdrawal from California, agreed with Otter. That was the dude that had the Twitter. Why exit a market that is so undersupplied while favoring high-supplied markets? Good question. Well, because the economics on the undersupplied do not make sense, and they do make sense on the high-supplied market. So even though you've got a whole bunch of competitors in Texas, and if you go to Texas, you will see some of the biggest home builders, and they will have just multiple plats. I mean, just enormous developments. I spent a bunch of time in Texas just post the S&L crisis. Yeah, the S&L crisis, late 80s, early 90s. Some of the home builders there, it was incredible the amount of development they were doing, because they could see the expansion of Dallas-Fort Worth, just a huge metropolitan market. And you've got all these jobs and people are able to commute in. And another thing where you don't have the traffic in Texas that you do in California. You don't have the clogged up freeway system because they build these massive freeways. I mean, just so many lanes wide compared to what I'm used to here. Double and triple and quadruple the number of lanes that we have because they have land and they've planned ahead on their residential development. Whereas California is locked in, Washington's locked in. We got what we got. And if we try and change things, you got to do a whole bunch of eminent domain. You got to take people's properties. You got to work around a lake. You got to work around, green belt. You got to work around all kinds of just, stuff. And you don't necessarily have that in Texas. They're like, yeah, we need a freeway. Drop it right down there. Boom, let's go. And that's what they do. And people don't necessarily understand that difference. Oh, yeah, this is why houses are cheaper. Well, it's a thing, right? So we go back to, why exit the undersupplied and why keep going in the high supplied markets. Wood didn't give a reason publicly, the developer, but its exit tells you a lot. The answer is right there. Like, yeah, okay, yeah. If they could, they would try and make it work because there is demand. There's going to be big demand because you've got such an undersupply in California. Many West Coast cities have made good progress on reforming zoning and streamlining permits, but A, there's still much work to do, and B, much of that progress has been offset by intensifying regulatory pressures facing operators after an apartment property is built. So, yeah, they've loosened up some of the restrictions building them, but now they're dictating the conditions upon once they're constructed. And so, operators, why would I do that if I can go to Texas and just build them willy-nilly and get in, get out, make my money, whatever, hold on to them, not have all these restrictions? Why would I do that? Why would I go to California? Well, it's the Golden State. Got a lot of sunshine. Yeah, Florida and Texas got a lot of sunshine too, right? And they're building some homes. Not saying everything in Florida and Texas is perfect. We're talking about housing. Talking about housing. Newsweek previously reported that blue states such as California and New York are facing a chronic undersupply of homes due to excessive regulations that stifle new construction projects. You know what? We've never, here in the Pacific Northwest, we do not have major home builders here. We have them. Pulte is here. A couple others have done various smaller projects, but you don't have the ability to scale here in the Pacific Northwest. Land acquisition, lot cost is so high here. It's just so high. There's such a demand for land, and we just don't have much left. So a lot of the development happens here in the Pacific Northwest is spot lot infill. It's not these massive projects. It's like one-off. So the developers that can work that out, figure out how to make that go, do very well. But that's a niche, and they're also not supplying huge numbers of housing to the overall supply. They're supplying enough, but enough for the folks that can afford them can. And when your median housing price is $800,000-$900,000, it takes a huge chunk of change every month just to come up with that payment. Not everybody's there. Not everybody is a tech bro. And so that translates to down in California, your housing costs are just going to go through the absolute roof. I mean, they're just going to bloop. Because if everybody's still competing for that supply, then what happens? Yeah. And if there's even fewer relative to the population. Now, California has lost some population, but not enough to offset the lack of affordable housing. Daryl Fairweather, chief economist at Redfin, previously told Newsweek that it's easier to build in Texas than in states such as California or New York because of more relaxed zoning laws, less red tape, cheaper land, and cheaper construction costs. Stuff is just so much cheaper. Same thing. I go to Oklahoma City to visit my parents. And you look at the development there, and it is coming from Seattle, where everything is just upside down. Like it costs there, for example, there is we would typically call them apartments, but they're condos, and they're a block away from Lake Union, but they're like 1,000 square feet, 1,200 square feet. Some of the upper ones have some views, but we call them cereal boxes because they're long and thin and rectangular. They're like one room wide, and these are like 1,000 square feet, and they're going for like $1.1 million, $1.1 million, $1.2 million, depending on their views. And these are small housing units. They're small. I mean, they're nothing special. Whereas you go to Texas, and you go to Oklahoma City, and you get a nice home for $1 million. You get a nice home for $500,000, maybe not in Dallas anymore, but you go further out and in Oklahoma, yeah, 500,000. You get a home. But then the flip side is you don't have, you got to live there. You might have a tornado come and take your home. So you got to work that out. And, there's always checks and balances, right? There's strong job market in Texas and in Dallas, and strong job market in Oklahoma City. California, well, it is what it is. And you've got income taxes in California as well. There's also strong demand for homes from out-of-state buyers because they know a home in Texas is going to go up. It's affordable now. The numbers pencil, and moving forward, odds are that things are going to go your way if you buy a home there. California, let's see. We've got all kinds of businesses pulling out. You've got big developer like today pulling out. So the article goes on to say the current shortage of homes in the Golden State could be fixed by making it easier for developers to build new multifamily homes. California has already passed zoning reform at the state level. Now those laws need to be enforced and development needs to be supported instead of interfered with. It's not going to happen. It is what it is. These areas are hosed. You're not going to go backwards. It's like taking a city budget and cutting out all the fluff, right? Not going to happen because those folks that want to keep their jobs. Yeah. You know what I mean? So it's like, oh yeah, we can cut this. Oh yeah, let's just let them build here. Oh yeah, let's just let them build here. Now, so much to do with the insurance crisis in California is they have allowed them to build in areas that they didn't used to, meaning the wildfires are coming down and clipping homes. And so, you've got this situation that is, to me, in my lifetime, is not going to get better because you've got a system of Democratic politicians with their, developers are terrible, builders are bad. We need affordable housing, but we want to screw those builders. We want to screw those developers because, housing for the people. And what that translates into is what's happening here today, which is we're out of here. We're done. We're no longer. And they're not even saying that. They're just pulling out and somebody else is putting up the tweet. Well, I know these guys and this is what they're saying. And it makes sense. Why wouldn't you pull out when you have other viable big markets across the United States to jump into? Now, what we hear about in California is we hear about how all their numbers are great and things are looking good. But then when you've got, you got something like this, you're like, well, I mean, you can tell me that all day long. But I'm going to look at the underlying data, which is if things were great and things were just 2 thumbs up, California forever, the Golden State, awesome, incredible. Yeah, when your major housing developer pulls out, there's a reason for that, right? And it's not because they're making just hand over fist money. No, it's because they've decided the economics no longer make sense. And they're out of there. So this is, I know this isn't a sexy podcast. I'm fully aware of that, but this is one of those things that you kind of need to keep in the back of your mind. Oh yeah. Okay. That's what happens when things go wildly south as they have in California with their overregulation, overtaxation, just a constriction of everything in the state. And this will keep happening. Insurance companies keep pulling out, all that stuff. That'll keep happening. There's no way to stop that. And all of a sudden, oh yeah, let's just make it easier to build. Let's bring that cost of the land. Let's bring that cost of development. Let's bring that cost of construction. Let's just bring that all down. Cause no, that's not happening and will not happen in the future unless you have some major changes politically. Don't see that happening in California. All right. That's it for me on this one. Thanks so much for being here. I'd love to have you subscribe, do all that good stuff, and I'll see you on the next episode. Thanks again for joining. Bye for now.